to Zen Magic, and today we are doing Fundamental Episode 6, I believe. Yeah, 6. And we're just going to talk about some other tools that you should have in your magic arsenal. By the way, this is the Bicycle Steampunk deck, just in case you're wondering. This isn't a deck review. This is not... I do deck reviews, though. Comment below on what decks I should review, and I'll go get them and review them. So, we're just going to talk about some other, tools that you need to know how to do, but they don't really fit into any categories, or I've already done them and left them out. We're going to talk about Elmsley counts, which is making it seem like you have more cards than you really have. And we're going to talk about double lift setups. And I'm going to talk briefly about the key card principle. And we'll actually start with that. So the key card principle is using a card that you've memorized to locate another card. An example would be if I memorize the 7 of Hearts and then have you pick any card, it doesn't matter what it is. I tell you to put the card on the top, and then it doesn't matter how many cuts I give the deck. I always know your card is above my key card. So when I spread through the deck, I just have to go find that 7 of Hearts, and I know your card is right above it. Actually above it. So your card is the 2 of Diamonds. You could also have your key card on the bottom, and so when you cut the card, their card gets placed under, so I know any card below the 2 of Hearts is your card. And the reason this works is because people don't actually realize that cutting the cards doesn't do anything. If you imagine the cards as a circle, when you cut the cards, you're just choosing a new point for that circle to start at. I mean, small example, but you get what I'm trying to say. It doesn't matter how many times you cut the cards. Even if you separate the key card from theirs, the next time you cut it, you're going to put it back. Cutting the cards doesn't actually mix them, but you have to make them believe that. You have to say, we'll give it a couple of cuts just to mix up the cards, when in reality you're not doing anything to them, except just separating the cards at different points. So that's the key card principle. It's got a ton of uses, and we will use key cards in a lot of tricks, but I don't really like using it. Simply because you have to, find some way to figure out what that card is. Take a peek at it or whatever. I don't know, you can do a little peek like that, but there are some tricks that need key cards, and we'll talk about those. But let's move on to the next thing I want to talk about, which is counts. So a count is pretending you have more cards than you actually do, or pretending to show one card, like 9 of Spades, drop it down, it changes to the 7 of Hearts, because the 9 of Spades was still on top. That's all what counting is. There's 2 types of counting. So the first one's an Elmsley count. An Elmsley count is when you have, let's say you have 4 cards, alright? Think of it like this. An Elmsley count is just a double lift, but you're doing it to a small packet of cards. So I can show I have 1 card, I have 2 cards, and I have 3 cards. Alright? So that was a bad example. So I have 1 card, I have 2 cards, and I have 3 cards. But I actually have 4. All I did was I held these 2 together so that it would look like 1 card as I'm dealing them off. So I can show this is 2 cards coming off. 1 card, 2 cards, 3 cards. and they never know that you have a king. This has a ton of uses. There's a trick that I'm going to be teaching pretty soon called two-card monte, and it uses this type of count. I forget the name of it though, but it's basically where you show a card that they think you have, but in reality, it's the card under it, or you're hiding one. So, to recap, the Elmsley count makes it appear that you have more cards or less cards than you really do. That other type of count, I think, I forgot what it was called, but that makes it appear to show one card, but you lay down a different one, and that's got a ton of uses. We'll use counts a lot. Elmsley counts, double lifts, they're all used in a lot of tricks. Practically every single one. Speaking of double lifts, let's move into that last part. We're going to talk about double lift setups. And they're exactly what they sound like. It's how you place a card on top of a chosen card, just right there in front of them. And there's a bunch of different ways to do that. The first one we're going to do is called a Marlowe tilt. Marlowe tilt is where you take the card, so in this case King of Spades, and you put it somewhere in the middle. You get it lost in the middle, just like that. But if you snap, it comes back to the top of the deck. And all it is it's a depth perception, basically. That's all it is. You take a card from the top of the deck, and it's angled very much so in the back. So you can kind of see that normally from the front you can't see anything, but back here you've got all this huge gap. And then it's a matter of depth perception. You make it look like it's going somewhere in the middle because of that shadow it's creating and how elevated it is. But when you square it up, you conceal it and you drop the card on top. And now you've placed the card second from the top. That's a double lift setup. Another double lift setup you can do is I use this all the time in an original trick that I created. What I do is I tell somebody that I want them to tell me when to stop as I riffle down the deck. And as I do that, I just catch this last card and then transfer it to a thumb break back here. And so what's happening is they riffle, or I riffle, and they say stop. They say stop right here. I show them the card. And then as I turn this card back over, I just drop this card on top. And now I have a card underneath their card. And then this one's free to get lost in the deck. But it will always come back to the top of the deck because they don't know that that's their card. So again, you have them tell you when to stop as you riffle down. Meanwhile, you have this thumb break back here. And they riffle, they say stop. Wherever they say stop, you show them the card. As you turn it back over, you drop the card on top. And then lose that extra card in the deck. Just like that, you can do whatever you want. You can just, whatever, to bring it back to the top. So that's another type of double lift setup. Double lift setups are very important because there are ways that you can put cards in double lifts. Another way to do a double lift setup that I'm not really a big fan of would be using a double backer. So I'm actually just gonna find a deck with double backer. Hang on. We're just gonna get a double backer here. I'll just show you what that looks like using a double backer. Alright, so what would happen is you would have the double backer on top of the deck to start with, alright? And then they can pick a card. It doesn't matter what it is. What you would do is you would have them point to a card, alright? So they point to one, you say that one, okay. and then you turn it over while it's on top of the deck. This is just one card. And then you turn them both back over, the card and the double backer, and then you would lose the double backer. So you show them the card, you turn them both over, you lose the double backer, their card stays on top. And what's great about this is I use this all the time in just a quick trick that is like the first trick I ever learned, where you have the double backer and then another random card on top of it. And then you have somebody, or I guess what you'd do is you'd have two cards on top of it. So you go up to someone, you're just like, hey, memorize this card. This is two cards, you just did a double lift. They say, okay, you turn it back over, and then you lose the card that's not their card in the middle of the deck. Drop it back on top, you can snap, and it comes back to the top, and then set it on top of the double backer. And then they're always like, okay, do that again. So I'm like, sure, we'll use the same card. You turn them both over, the double backer included, and you lose the double backer. That's just another way to do a double lift setup. I'm not really a big fan of it because remember, if you use gimmicks, you have to find some way to get rid of them. They can't stay in the deck if you're going to do other tricks. So, not a big fan of that one, but it does work sometimes. You'll just have to... whatever. If you want to use a double backer, that's great, but there are other much better ways to get a double lift set up. So, that brings us to the end of this video. There are other tutorials online learning the Elmsley count. I didn't really teach it, I guess. But I mean, you kind of get the idea. And there's other ways you can do the Elmsley count. I can make 3 cards look like as many as I want, just from peeling the card off, and as I place it back, I pull another one off. So I show 2 cards. Here, this is what it would look like. If I have 7 of spades, I pull it off, and I'm going to place it back as I pull off a 10, and then I just keep showing. Obviously, you wouldn't show the faces, you show the backs to show that you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, as many as you want. As many cards as you want to show. That's obviously a sloppy way of doing it. But that's basically what the Elmsley count is for. Making them think you have more cards than you actually have. So, just practice the Elmsley count. Get the hang of the double lift setups, where they pick a card and then it gets lost, but somehow it manages to come back to the top. Whatever you want to do with that. And definitely, I wouldn't say practice the key card, but definitely understand what it is. You can memorize any card in the deck. It doesn't have to be the top or the bottom. Those are just the easiest because their card will be placed above or below those two. And remember, no matter how many times they cut the deck, you can even have them cut the deck. This is what I do. I would memorize the top card, hand the deck to them, tell them to find a card, place it on top, and then have them cut the cards as many times as they want. But you have to tell them to only cut it. Now, what would happen if they cut the card at your key card? Let's say the 7 of diamonds is my key card. And as I spread through, I noticed that the key card's been separated, right? Well, that would depend. If this was the bottom card, I know their card's the top card. If this was the top card before, then I know that this is the 4 of spades. You just have to remember which card you used as the key card, if it ever gets separated. But if they ever separate the card, you just know it's the one that follows. Think of it as a complete circle. Their card will always be after or before the key card, no matter how many times it's cut. Even if it's separated, it would still come after, which would make it the top card, or before, which would make it the one before it. So practice those. Get good at the double lift. If you haven't seen the fundamental episode on the double lift, that's up here. Check that out. And remember, we perform to amaze. See you next week.